I'm still holding XRP. Now this video is all about why I'm still holding XRP. So hi, welcome back to the channel if you are new here. This is just one of those videos where I grab the camera, get out of the studio, and we just have a bit of a casual conversation whilst I'm out on a walk. So if you're new to the channel, first of all, hi, welcome. My name is Nick, and yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of the 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗧𝗏 YouTube channel. So let's get into what's going on then with kind of, XRP and why I am still holding it. I think it's actually important to get a bit of a backstory here as well. So do bear with me whilst I kind of go through that part to kind of set up the why, because I've been invested in XRP for, it must be 6 or 7 years, right? We're talking 2019 and 2020, right? As the kind of bulk of the kind of accumulation era for XRP for me, right? And this was the time when the market was pretty much like it is now, down, pretty ugly, and just generally like the sentiment was pretty sour. In 2020, the market did start to turn around a little bit after the pandemic crash, so there's some fantastic opportunities to accumulate at lower prices during that time. Obviously, the lawsuit in late 2020 was a bit of a shock to many, but again, hold firm, didn't sell, actually, bought more, doubling down, all of that kind of usual stuff. And I guess that the subsequent years after that were a little bit, frustrating. We saw, pretty kind of turbulent market. 2021 was pretty bullish. We reached about $1.96. Didn't sell, held on still, because it's about the long-term play, not about short-term gains and stuff like that. Hindsight, of course, is always brilliant, right? Because you could have sold at 196, bought it back lower, but I actually did double down at 30 cents during 2022. So, it's not like the end of the world, because it's just building bigger positions and all that kind of stuff. And through the years, you've kind of come to see the price action swing around wildly, and you get pretty numb to the market over the years, right? 20-30% swings, you get pretty comfortable with it pretty quick, right? But of course, I'm sat in maybe a different position because I've been in the space long enough and I've been accumulating long enough that, the average purchase price is very, very low, right? I remember paying sub 10 cents on XRP. I remember the 17 cents during December 2020. I remember buying on Binance at 30 cents during 2022, right? So, I'm sat in a very different position, and I get that, right? This isn't bragging or anything like that. My average is just lower, so I'm more comfortable, right? Because technically I'm in profit. There are, of course, people who maybe bought at $3 and they're not in profit and they're in a different position and it bothers them, they're frustrated, they're irritated. So I guess the first kind of thing to kind of get out of the way is, yeah, I'm still holding because I'm in profit and I don't really feel the pressure to sell, right? That's part of it. But it's not the full picture, is it? Because, I've been around long enough to be investing during the swings of 2019, the swings of 2020, 2021, 2022. I saw the price go to $1.90 all the way back down to 30 cents, right? So it isn't a case of you don't feel pain. You just learn to deal with the volatility of the market because the time horizon on which I'm looking at the market in is long enough. I'm not thinking about, I'm not investing with this requirement to pull that money out within a few months, right? I'm investing, for the long term. When I invest money, I consider it mentally spent. I don't think I can pull that money out. And therefore I have this really long time horizon. I'm quite happy to sit on my positions for decades, and I'm perfectly fine with that. If I pass away, that's okay. My cold storage will pass down to my children, and they'll be okay in the future, right? And so it's really important to kind of get a bit of perspective generally, right? As long as you don't overextend yourself, you're not, gambling money that you can't afford to lose, you can have a long-term horizon as long as you've got abilities to be proper risk managed, right? So what I mean by this is making sure that you're not putting money into the market, into XRP, that you need to pay your mortgage, your rents, your bills, these kind of things. It's just disposable money that you can consider spent. Maybe you look at it as maybe beer money and you're just not going to have a beer this week, so that money can go into XRP, and you have this long time horizon where decades can pass and it doesn't really matter. It's not what the whales want, but I'll keep that for a separate video, right? But for the most part, generally speaking, when you have the investment thesis and you've got risk management sorted, generally you feel a little bit more relaxed about it. The other thing that's worth noticing here, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, is risk management, right? Because risk management allows you to be more relaxed about your positions. That means that, I'm not allocating 100% of my portfolio into XRP. It is a percentage of my portfolio. It's an okay percentage, but it's not double-digit percentages because my portfolio covers many different things, right? So first of all, we want to make sure that we don't overexpose ourselves, and then we want to make sure that we aren't overexposing our portfolio to a single asset as well, right? Because that is just not proper risk management. But those are only really the fundamentals of why I usually stay pretty calm during market volatility. But there are some fundamental reasons why holding XRP during these kind of time periods, it kind of just is the right thing to do, right? Because if we take a look from a fundamental standpoint, when I was first investing in XRP, its main real purpose was just as a bridge asset, right? It was designed, it was even on-demand liquidity back then, right? It was simply designed to just be the bridge between different fiat currencies. And this is around the time that stablecoins started to gain some traction too, right? So, stablecoins, there was that fear that maybe stablecoins were going to eat into, the XRP utility and the thesis and stuff like that. But the reality of the situation is that stablecoins, they are just tokenized fiat currency. They have all the same problems of fiat currency, only that they move on a blockchain instead. So a stablecoin in itself was never really designed as a replacement for XRP. It was simply just a replacement for cash. You could have a digital representation that sat on the blockchain, and it made trading easy. You can trade in and out of volatile assets like XRP into stablecoins, and your life was made much easier. You didn't have to go back to a bank and all of that kind of stuff, and then end up getting debanked, as Chris did on this channel, simply because he had a transaction with Coinbase purchasing XRP. Right, and that bank was Santander, by the way, which obviously, as you guys probably know, they're already partners with Ripple, and they understand the XRP token, right? So make that make sense, right? They're debanking people for purchasing an asset that they're even investing in themselves. Make it make sense. But anyway, so we understand that fundamentally, XRP was just sat in a really strong position, but now it's changed again, right? Because XRP is still that liquidity bridge, it's still that liquidity asset, but it's changing from just fiat currencies. We're now entering a world of real-world asset tokenization. We're entering a world of bringing mortgages, credit, lending, borrowing onto the blockchain, onto the XRP ledger. And that means that potentially you have XRP facilitating different types of liquidity requirements. Maybe XRP gets used as collateral for loans. Maybe you need XRP to be the universal liquidity layer for all of your RWAs that are sat on the blockchain. So when we take a look at, the XRP token over the last kind of 6 or so years, I look at it and I just think to myself, why would I sell it, right? Sure, the price has come down quite considerably from $3, and I understand some people are going to be in negative numbers and it's going to hurt them, right? But that would be short term. We're talking, 12 months? In 12 months, it's gone from $3.60 down to about $1.05 or whatever it is today. So, yeah, sure, that's uncomfortable. But at the same time, I've seen this thing do some pretty crazy stuff too. And I've held all the way through, right? Buying the kind of pandemic crash of 2020, buying the SEC lawsuit of 2020, seeing it rise to $1.90, crash down to 30 cents, hover and stay around 30, 40, and 50 cents for a very long time. Finally getting that breakout of November 2024 and seeing it rise to $3.60, seeing it come all the way back down to $1 again, right? And I haven't sold a single token. And so, yeah, I hold. I hold because I'm comfortable in what I've invested in. I haven't overexposed myself. I haven't gambled money that I can't afford to lose. I consider it mentally as spent. And fundamentally, the XRP token, the XRP ledger, is growing an immense amount of real-world utility. which I think is ultimately the next cycle catalyst, right? RWAs are a massive part of that, but ultimately it's institutions, institutional use cases, and real world use cases that ultimately are going to be that kind of big driver in the market. And so I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, why would I sell? Why wouldn't I hold an asset that seems very well positioned for all of that? Right? We've seen the XRP ledger grow massively in terms of RWA volume, right? On-chain tokenization's grown well in excess of $4 billion in such a short space of time. And most of that happened in 2026 while the price was going down. So like from a fundamental standpoint, XRP is getting stronger and stronger and stronger every single day that goes by, even if that price is going down just a little bit every single time. So I think like for retail investors, we kind of get too hyper-focused on those hourly candles, those daily candles, and we lose sight of the much bigger picture. Because over the years, I can tell you, right, the story has only gotten stronger, not weaker. And every day that passes is just another day where the price might bounce around. It might give you opportunities to enter. It might give you opportunities to exit if you wanted to. But ultimately, it's giving you more reasons to see the direction where the world is heading and where the technology is heading. Now, there won't be just one winner in this world either. XRP won't be the one token to rule them all, right? There's going to be multiple chains that win here. But ultimately, it does look more and more promising that the XRP ledger will sit somewhere in the mix of this new digital world that we are entering into. So with that said, I kind of feel comfortable in my position, right? It's a small percentage of my portfolio, not everything, right? In that portfolio, I've got a whole host of different assets that serve different kind of reasons to exist, right? And I think it's important that we understand that as a retail investor, our emotions are ultimately our weakest point, right? The price action, the charts, the social media, negativity, the sentiment, they can persuade you to almost liquidate your assets almost at the worst possible point in time. And I say this because I do still expect to lose that $1 level, by the way. I do still see a reason to revisit the 80-cent area one last time. And that's just historically kind of lining up with what we would expect to see before we get into that next big run to the upside. So I say that I'm holding now. I'll hold at 80 cents. I would hold at 50 cents. I would hold at 30, 10 cents. It doesn't really matter to me because I've already mentally kind of forgotten about the money that I've invested, and it's not going to break my entire existence by having a little bit of volatility. And that's because I buy the tokens, I hold the tokens myself, I do not keep them on exchanges, and I'm not using leverage or anything like that. I'm not trying to get quick money here. I am simply investing in the technology, the tokens that I think actually fit the future that I see coming. I could be wrong, of course. I could be foolish for not selling. People will say I was foolish for not selling in 2021. They'll say that I'm foolish for not selling in 2025. And that's fine. Everyone can have their own thoughts and opinions on it. But my portfolio, it's a vault, right? Everything goes into it, never comes out unless there's a good reason for it to do so. And I'm a long-term investor, decades, not, just years and things like that. So yeah, I think for the most part, pretty comfortable with the positions on all of the different cryptocurrency assets that I hold, including XRP. And I think ultimately it's stronger now than it's ever been before. So the question I really have for you guys is, do you think the XRP is weaker now just because the price has come down? Or do you think actually everything that's kind of happening in the real world is actually what XRP was designed to do? You can let me know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. If you haven't done so already, you need to get set up on as many centralized exchanges as possible. We've had 2 different centralized exchanges already go out of business this week. So you've got to make sure that you are using a proper exchange redundancy strategy. You can check the pinned comment down below or the description for a list of the exchanges that I'm currently using. Things like Kraken, Bybit, BitGet, things like that. Well worth checking out, getting yourself set up on those exchanges so that you don't become a victim to not being able to on or off ramp in any particular jurisdiction or during these kind of outages. So that's going to wrap up this little walk and talk. If you found it useful, smash the like button, subscribe for more just like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.